Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
So I've got VK7 Mike Oscar in the studio, and I've got VK7 Whiskey November in the studio. And Rex, we've got a little bit of news about Dubus.
Right. Well, first, let us put the new Dubis on the screen, which has only just come out today. Some of you will be subscribers to Dubis. Others will be aware of it. Dubis is a magazine that covers essentially everything from VHF upwards.
Yep.
It's published in Germany, and it's dual language, English and German, and it's probably the magazine
Correct.
for VHF and above. So
Well and truly.
terrific. Now, I had an email request from the editor of Dubis to write a little article on some work we've been doing with the new FST4 and FST4W modes on optical communication,
Okay.
which Joe Taylor has just recently released in public.
Yep.
I sent him back a little article, and I thought I would ask him because I didn't know what Dubis stood for, and I don't think many people do, and I thought it would be pretty useful to find out.
Yes.
Well, he kindly came back to me and told me. So the D is rather obvious. That's for DX, so we can all understand that. The U stands for something which, fortunately, we have Warren here who spent
Can you read that one?
spent some of his youth in Germany, and he's now going to tell us what that word is.
Yes. I lived in Germany from age about 10 till age 21.
Right.
And so that was sufficient time to get my head around some of these long German words. And this word that starts with the U is Überreichweiten. I'll say that again, Überreichweiten. So which I guess literally translated means like over distance, overreach distance, perhaps.
Okay.
I guess you could interpret that different ways depending on the context. And actually, über would have the U with the 2 dots, and then that would be followed with the B. But as an alternative, you can leave the 2 dots away and follow the U with the E instead.
Okay. Okay.
And then, so then in Dubis, the B comes from Bau von Geräten. That would be like the building of apparatuses, or as they say, construction of equipment.
Cool.
So, yeah, who would have known that?
Right. Well, if we just go back, so the U part, the translation that the editor of Dubis gave me was enhanced propagation conditions. So the U and the S at the end are things that we can all understand. U for UHF and S for SHF. So effectively Dubis means DX, enhanced propagation conditions, construction of equipment, UHF and SHF. So it all makes reasonable sense. You'll notice that the editor of Dubis qualified this by saying, I know Dubis sounds a really strange name. And I guess for those that didn't know what it meant, it did seem very strange.
There you go.
So we now know.
I love it. I love it. That is fantastic. So, thank you, Rex, and thank you, Warren.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
We might give you that just in case you want to put something in the broadcast.
Oh
about
yes,
what it means.
yeah, well and truly, and actually spell it right.
Yeah, you won't be able to get anyone to pronounce it in the broadcast.
And I'm reading it this week, so, so I'll probably go back to this recording. See. Oh no, actually, no, I can ask Helen, because Helen knows German.
Oh, good.
So
yeah.
so she'd be able to give me the pronunciation that's correct.
Yes.
So and get the umlauts and everything in the right place, and the how that's supposed to be
I
said,
think we
so.
should feel very lucky that we've actually got to the bottom of this here and found out what Dubis stands for.
Definitely.
I mean, yes.
Definitely.
So, and while we're on the topic of understanding some of our magazines that we like to read, I would like to quiz the author of an article for a please explain. 'Cause
I know what's coming.
in my mail today, I received this magazine. And on very close inspection,
we can go to on close inspection. Yes.
on close inspection, you say, "Oh, okay, so yes, we do have female amateurs, so that's good to see they're out and about sotaing." And then I'm looking at the bag, and the label on the bag, the name tag says VK7TW. I thought, I know this name. Who is this person? It doesn't look
at all like me. It's not my legs.
So here's your opportunity to set the record straight.
And can I just say, the article, I actually, the original photo that was shown a little while ago,
so the
the original photo didn't appear on the cover, but appeared in the actual article.
yes, that I was going to come to that next. Now, who is this person?
Well, no, this
How many of them are there?
I'm not saying. But yes, I received a call from our new AR editor, Roger VK7MO, who said, because I've been talking to him about whether he wanted an article about the IC705. And he said, we're thinking about the cover. Here's the idea that we want to do for the cover, which actually followed, if you've seen the advertising for the IC705, the ICOM advertising for the IC705, there is lots of people in very sporty outfits with, runners on and up on a mountain and all of this sort of stuff. It's very outdoorsy and which is quite unusual for ICOM, because ICOM, I think quite a few people when they got their 705s commented that the box that it actually comes in is very bright and it's got a whole lot of pictures on it, and it's, and ICOM boxes are usually pretty boring.
That's right.
They're just cardboard. But this is a glossy box with, outdoor settings and all sorts of stuff on it. So Roger he said, I want to do a bit of a play on the ICOM advertising. And do you reckon that you could get somebody with half reasonable legs to go in an outdoor setting and imitate the ICOM advertising? And he said, I've got another request that may or may not eventuate, but do you reckon you could get them in high heels? And I went, maybe leave that one with me, Roger. So anyway, I managed to convince one of my staff members.
And you took them up onto a mountain.
To meet me on the mountain from the boss. So that was how we got the particular photos. So it was going to originally be portable pleasures as the byline on the front cover, but I understand it was lessened somewhat to portable pursuits.
I believe portable pleasures is quoted inside, though.
Yes, I think it might be. So I think Roger did get his way anyway. So that's the story.
Yes. Oh, okay. Excellent. Yes.
That's the story. So yes, that's and I did use my Aussie 705 the other day on Sunday when I activated Mount Saddleback up in the northeast of Tasmania. So it performed admirably.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Well, so I found this in my letterbox only today.
Cool.
And it says your review in it, which is excellent.
Yeah.
Followed by someone else's review.
Correct.
Also quite comprehensive.
Yep.
And then again, towards the back, where the
review.
letters to the editor are, there's someone makes a reasonable write-up as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very dedicated 705 issue, this one here. It even has
advertising on the
ad
back.
on the
There
back
you go.
as well.
And you can see there that's the sort of the outdoor sort of setting that they've assumed for their advertising. It's get out and be active with your 705,
Yeah.
And I must say, the person who did the second article in there is using it as a microwave IF rig for 3.4 gigs. So yeah, they did do that, which is good. So anyway, that's the story.
Okay.
And I was debating whether I'd get the graphic artist to blur out the call sign, but anyway.
Oh no! I think that's a fine touch. Yes, I noticed it caused some discussion on the Facebook page.
I'll have to go and have a look at that. I haven't seen it. But anyway, so thank you, Rex and Warren.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
we now know what Dubus actually stands for, so it's good. We'll now go to our interview with Murray VK7ZMS, and we start this interview just a little bit into it. We had a few streaming issues, so you'll have to excuse the first bit of this particular interview is missing. So we'll head to Murray VK7ZMS.
On Lake Macquarie,
Okay.
and it's obviously having some maintenance work done because the bottom cowls are off.
Yep.
And this is a Cessna 180. I'd say it's a 60s model of some sort.
Okay.
And the first time I ever went in an aeroplane was in that plane, and we flew from Cooranbong to Lightning Ridge, and I don't know why we went to Lightning Ridge, but we did.
Pick up
And
some
then
opals.
we came back.
Yep.
Well, possibly. But, you know, I suspect, being my dad, there was some other more mundane reason, like he needed to go and do a welding job for somebody up there. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
But any excuse to, yeah. And this plane has a very interesting background. It was actually a mission plane,
Okay.
and it spent most of its life in New Guinea. There's actually a whole book written about this particular plane, and I managed to track down a picture of it in New Guinea.
Wow.
And of course, from Amazon, I stole the picture of the front cover of the book written about it.
Well, there you go.
But to be fair, the first planes that I really remember flying in was this plane here,
Okay.
which belonged to some Tasmanians. And
Okay.
after we moved to Tassie, my dad worked for these guys, and they all thought that there was some brothers owned it, and they all got their student license, and they never really went any further than that. So anytime they ever wanted to go anywhere, Dad would end up flying them.
Okay.
Of course, you know, if you balance up lying on the dirt underneath a dozer welding or going flying, it's not a hard decision to make. So Dad had a pretty good arrangement with the place he worked. He would chalk his overtime up on the board, and when he borrowed the plane, he would take the fuel out of the overtime, and
Very good.
that's
Nice
how it
arrangement.
went. So I spent a bit of time in this plane, but they didn't keep that for very long. And that's a Cessna 182, but it's an older model. They bought a later model 182, which is this one here.
Okay.
This one I spent a lot of time in. And this had long-range fuel tanks in it.
Ooh. Okay.
I think we had 6 hours plus 45 minutes reserve.
Okay.
And of most importance, a constant speed propeller or variable pitch propeller.
Okay.
Of course, increases your cruise speed,
Yep.
gives you higher gear, gives you lower gear for taking off. Also, during to the wonders of the internet, I found a picture of the cockpit.
Oh, there you go.
And here, of course, is my first actual real-world experience with radio.
Okay.
The wonderful AM airband. It has a very distinctive sound. And just recently, when I was a couple of years ago in the cockpit of an aircraft, and I heard the AM radio, I'm like, oh wow, it's very different.
It's
to
different. Yes.
what we're used to. And you can see right in the middle of that picture is the dual channel radio.
Yep.
So
Okay.
you could flick it onto COM A or COM B, and you could pre-select another frequency and then hit the button and change over to it.
Okay.
Down on the floor there, you can see a very funny-looking microphone lead hanging off the end of that microphone. And over on the right-hand side, in the passenger seat, you can see another piece of radio equipment, which was the ident for the radar.
Ah,
So
yes. Okay.
they would give you a squawk code, and you would punch in that code, and then you would press the button, and then they would be able to identify you as to which dot you were on the screen.
Okay.
I can see at the top of the screen in the middle there's a couple of items of electronics that weren't there.
Yeah. They
I
look.
was
They
lost
look
in
quite
that
modern. Yes.
So yes, but apart from that, apart from those two things at the top, looks exactly the same as the time we flew in it. But yeah, lots of
Fantastic.
time spent in that, and even as a small kid, especially in this plane here. And when I say small, I mean small enough to sit on Mum's knee in the front seat.
Yep.
I spent hours at the controls of that plane. It didn't have what Dad called George, which was the autopilot, which the later one did. And so he was more than happy. You know, you're going across Bass Strait. It takes a while on a little plane, so you know, I would just sit there and follow the automatic the direction finder that was just tuned into an NDB.
Yep.
Incidentally, that was the first and only time I ever tried to learn Morse code was during a period in my pre-teens where I thought it'd be cool to learn Morse code so I could work out the idents on the NDBs.
Well, there you go. I love it.
The Z call in my call sign probably indicates how successful that was.
Yeah, very good.
But there you go. There you go. So enough of aeroplanes.
No, that's
I have got one more plane pick, which has nothing to do with this. But I put this on here because this is a treasured photo of a photo in this case, and that's actually me standing on the flight deck of the John C. Stennis, which of course was the last nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed ship ever allowed into Hobart.
carrier. Yeah.
And a customer of mine who was just didn't know managed to get me a trip out onto that, even though there was no visitors allowed on this. There was about 40 of us went out there on an excursion, and yeah, that's
Wow.
they're a lot bigger plane than you'd imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's a
that's the
tomcat, isn't it? It's a
yes, I
Yeah.
believe so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. In 1994, I saw on the date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, very good.
So that was a bit out of sequence, that one, but I thought I'd put it in with the flying, with the plane pictures.
Okay. So, you've sort of been exposed to sort of radio and fairly technical sort of flying and things like that. What's the sort of what got you into a sort of a technical career?
Oh, look, the interest in all things technical, I think, really started on the farm because we had no we had no TV.
Okay.
You know, the closest thing we had to technology was the radio, and
Yep.
you know, there's only so many times you can listen to AM and PM as a kid and actually be interested at all. And I think probably the first electronic, I wouldn't even call it electronic, I'd say electro-mechanical thing that I saw somewhere. I honestly can't remember where I saw it, but it was a buzzer.
Okay.
It was a buzzer which was literally made by cutting up an old baked bean can
Okay.
with the tin snips, flattening it out, make it into a Z shape, drive a nail into a piece of wood, wind a coil around it,
Yep.
and if you got the gap just right,
It
you
does.
nailed the other side into a bit of wood. And if you ran it with an AC power supply, and I just happened to have I acquired an old electric blanket power supply back when
Yeah.
they
Okay.
used to have
Low-
variable voltage
There you
fire a
go.
power supply into the blanket. And that was great. And we actually had in that downstairs garage in that house that I showed you earlier, one of Dad's friends who recently parted company with his wife, lived with us for probably best part of a year.
Okay.
And we put the telephone extension down there, but of course there's no real way to transfer phone calls. So I actually had one of these buzzers upstairs and downstairs, including the homemade switch out of, you know, the baked bean can as well, and just nailed onto the piece of wood. And so at any stage he answered the phone, if it was us, he would press his button and it would buzz upstairs for us, and vice versa.
There you go.
So that was probably my first electromechanical success.
I love it.
Not long after that, my mum actually bought me Dick Smith Funway into Electronics,
Yep.
Volume 1. Well, it wasn't called Volume 1, of course, then, because Volume 2 hadn't come out.
Yeah.
And I built all the things in that, including the CW transmitter.
Yep. Yeah.
And of course, the first thing I did when I got that to work was my room backed onto the kitchen, and the cupboard where the radio sat was right against the wall.
Okay.
So, of course, the first thing I did to do that was interfere with my dad's listening to PM that evening.
Ooh.
It didn't take him a whole lot of time to figure out what was going on, I have to say, disappointingly.
Right.
And the next day I experimented, and I managed to increase the range from 300 millimeters to probably 7 or 8 meters
Okay.
with the use of several very large antennas in the yard.
Okay.
So I had probably 2 antennas, probably 15 meters long,
Yep.
running adjacent to each other, and I could get them, I could receive on one with the transmitter at least 7 or 8 metres from the other one.
Okay.
So, bearing in mind this was a transmitter made out of 1, possibly 2 MPN switching
Transistors, yeah. BC549s or something.
549s they would have been, absolutely, and receiving on a broadcast receiver. So, anyway, that was where I got into electronics.
Okay.
And it sort of went on from there. My next sort of radio experience, my dad bought a small boat.
Okay.
And it had a 27 meg marine radio on it.
Okay.
We used to report into what had just turned from Margate Base into Tasmania radio
Well, there you go.
on 27 megahertz, and then you'd hear you'd hear them calling in the people on the VHF.
Yep.
Of course, you wouldn't hear them, but that was that was a lot of fun, and it certainly sparked a bit of interest in there.
Okay.
Just after that, I went to a summer school for the one and only time back in New South Wales, and I'm pretty sure I signed up for that so I could go on the plane ride, to be honest.
Okay.
Anyway, no, look, I got talked into it, and my dad sent me across there, sadly on a commercial flight, and part of the curriculum was an electronics
Okay.
course, and we actually built an audio amplifier,
Yep. Okay.
which worked quite well. And we gave, you ended up as part of the course that there was like a little battery powered radio receiver, and then you
Okay.
had an amplifier and a speaker, and we did everything from folding up the case in the machine shop,
Yeah. Okay.
using the bender and
Yep.
mounting it all and building the electronics, and it was a few days work, and it was great. On that trip, I also went on my very first full drive adventure with my uncle,
Okay. Yes.
who had a Suzuki, and his mate in the background there had a
Land Cruiser? No.
Daihatsu.
Daihatsu. Okay.
And,
Yes.
yeah, and they were talking between each other on the AMCB, but my uncle was actually a CBer, like a proper CBer, like from back when propagation was good, and
Yep.
everyone had silly names for themselves, and there was no social media. They used to have CB meet, they'd all go and meet at a beach somewhere, or it was a thing.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So I sort of got a little bit of exposure to radio there as well.
Okay. There's a bit of a theme developing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, then I sort of went into at Matric. I did at Elizabeth College. They had a class called Computer Electronics,
Okay.
where we actually got to build a Z80 based program, a Z80 based computer from
Wow.
scratch, etched the circuit board, drilled the holes, mounted all the components, got it to work. It was running a BIOS that was written by the teacher. It was basically a rejigged version of, I think it was called a Tech 1.
Okay.
Remember back in the day?
Yep. CPM machine, wasn't it? CPM.
No, it's a Z80.
Yeah, but CPM, the operating system, running on a Z80. Z80.
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
Look, this was a different operating system that was rewritten by the teacher,
Okay.
and
Oh, cool.
it was just straight machine code in hex.
I love
It
it.
was, and that was my first computer programming experience.
Okay.
And then I more interested in camping and fishing and full driving and things.
Yep.
And one day we went to Arthur's Lake.
Okay.
Now, I really wasn't into trout fishing, and 8 of us went on this trip, and 7 of us bought a trout license. I went, I'll just watch our campfire, buddies, you guys. And I'd like to report that only one person caught a fish the whole weekend, so I felt very justified in not buying a trout license at this point.
Love it.
However, if you can look very closely on the back of my ute there, you can see on the tow bar a portable HF antenna.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, well, there you go.
And I'm, for the life of me, can't remember the name of this amateur.
Okay.
He lives up in, or used to live up in Claremont, and I'm going to say his last name was Mackenzie.
Robert.
That's him.
RB.
So he came on this trip,
Okay.
and he set this thing up, and come evening time, he just chatted to a whole bunch of people, which I'm going to assume, in retrospect, was probably the Sewing Circle group, or
Yeah.
possibly before they were even known as that.
Yep.
And I was really taken by that. I'm like, that stuff's cool. I'm getting into that. Like, so that was past CBs, because in the full driving we'd have migrated to FM, because like, how great's FM?
Yeah.
When you just want to talk car to car, there's no static crash from the ignition. There's no
spot on.
Yeah. So we've moved on from the 27 meg stuff.
Okay.
The UHF was great. I experimented a bit with that. Clayton helped me modify a couple of radios for a little bit more power than the 5 watts.
Okay.
And when the Electrophone TX4000s came out, of course, they had cell call, which again was really great. I actually, at that point, actually before that, back in 27, when we still had AM CBs in our cars and radios, when I was like 18, I'd left Glen Huon and was living at Sandfly.
Yep.
Not completely off the grid. We had power, but that was it.
Yep.
So I don't know if you remember the Commonwealth Employment Service.
Yes.
Yes. So I was looking for a job, and I was registered with them, and the only phone number I could give was a friend of mine who lived about 6-7 k's up the road.
Okay.
And his mum actually called me on the radio one day, and she's like, "Hey," she goes, "I just got a call from CES. They've got a job interview lined up for you." I'm like, "Oh, righto." So
Cool.
drive down to the phone box, have a talk to them, and it turns out it's the only job I think that I've ever actually applied for and got.
Right. Okay.
It's just always ended up in jobs rather than having to apply for
Yeah.
them.
So dare I ask what the job was? Was that?
Yes, absolutely. Why not? It was as a trainee parts interpreter at Performance Automobiles in their spare parts department.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's my first qualification, was as a
Yeah.
qualified warehouse person, I believe is probably the term.
Yeah.
Forklift license and the whole bit.
Okay. There you go.
And that certainly paid the rent and kept me for some years.
Good stuff. Very good.
But of course, we moved on from those sort of radios. And even after Robert's demonstration that evening, I sort of never really circled back to it. Life was a bit busy, just surviving and stuff.
Yeah.
A bit later on, got into commercial HF for VK737 for doing some touring.
Okay.
And at the time, it was mobile phone coverage wasn't great.
Yep.
I can remember on one of our trips driving past, just out of, I can't remember which side of Cooper Pedy it was, but there was a sign on the road and it said, "Telstra Mobile Net GSM coverage next 20 kilometres."
Yes.
And I didn't have a GSM phone at that stage. I had a analog phone, and I got on the UHF to my mate in front. I went, "Is your phone within reach?" He goes, "Yeah, just get the missus to pull it out from behind the seat," because we hadn't been in phone range for a couple of days at that point.
Yeah.
He goes, "It works." And of course, that was all the Americans out there
At Woomera.
At Woomera.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but that was a Codan 8525B.
Yep.
With a Turlin
Yep.
tapped whip, and I couldn't find a photo of that. But that got quite a bit of use.
Okay.
Moved on to.
I've got the Turlin vertical in the studio actually. Yes.
I've seen it there, but it's not an Outbacker.
No.
It's a different model.
No. It's an amateur one. Yes.
Yeah. Then we migrated to a Barrett 550.
Okay.
which had some modifications to it so that I could run it on amateur band. I had my amateur license by the time I bought that.
Okay.
And from a mobile perspective, auto-tune's great. having to pull up and jump out and turn the tap round, just
No.
You get a cell call coming in, you'd be on scan, and of course it would come in on a frequency you weren't tapped to, so you really needed to stop the car, jump out, retap it. Away you go.
Bit of a flaw with those antennas, really.
Somewhere along the line, about the same time, I acquired an old 27 megahertz CB base.
Okay.
I think that was probably before the Barrett 550, and a Station Master. And I put that up, and within 2 or 3 days, I worked a few DEEC stations. I worked a guy in Russia, which absolutely amazed me.
Yep.
And I'm like, right, need to get this amateur thing sorted. So off to the domain I went and sat through theory and novice theory and regs, I believe it was, with RO.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And then I came back and did, I think it was then called Full Course Theory.
Okay.
Can't remember what it was. Presto Z call.
Okay.
Because I'd actually started off thinking, I'll get a novice license, and then I realised that in actual fact Z call gave me access to more things I was interested in.
Yep.
So I was a commercial HF only person until the official Welcome to HF QSO party.
Okay.
Whatever year that was,
Yeah.
I can remember it.
Okay.
Interesting enough, I still have, and was talking to you earlier this evening on the very first amateur radio I ever bought,
There you
which
go.
was a Kenwood TM201A. I'll see if I can do a show and tell here, because it's sitting on the
Sitting
shelf
right
here.
there. I love it.
and
67.
tune into
Yep.
R2.
Yep.
And that was my first amateur radio, and it's still going strong.
Excellent. Excellent. That's the first bit of our shack tour, so that's great. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm getting ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, very good. Very good. So there was obviously a lot of, or a fair bit of four-wheel driving that I'm hearing here.
Lots. And quite a bit of fishing involved in there as well.
Yep. Okay.
To be fair, and some trips around various parts of Australia, which as Tasmanians we probably didn't consider as four-wheel driving, because we were used to tracks being quite difficult as opposed to being just dirt roads.
Yeah.
But look, having said that, we took a trip late February, we did a trip across the Simpson Desert and drove across the French line, which in hindsight probably wasn't the cleverest of things to do because it was a tad warm.
Okay.
And we drove 400 kilometres out into the desert and to the last fuel stop, and then we drove another 400 kilometres before we got to Birdsville, and that was 400 kilometres. 80 of it was over clay,
Yep.
and the rest of it was on sand dunes.
Yep.
And when you think of from a Tasmanian perspective, it's kind of like driving from Hobart to Devonport
Smithton.
and back to Launceston
Yeah.
across sand dunes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And you suddenly realise why they say stay with your vehicle, because there's no way you could carry enough water to walk out.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
Yep.
Not an ordinary person anyway. Maybe some super big expedition. I don't know, but
No.
certainly not me.
No. Yeah. Okay.
So quite a bit of that sort of.
Okay.
A few trips to Fraser Island,
Yep.
Cape York,
Okay. Very good.
before it was all bitumen.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Oh, look, that's fantastic, Murray. So at what point at what point did the sort of the radio turn into a bit more than just a hobby? Where did
Well,
you? Yeah.
I'm not sure quite who to blame for that.
Okay.
I think, bizarrely enough, I'd have to lay the blame at the foot of Ken DY.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because he introduced me to Richard, ZBX, and ZDM
Yep. Yeah.
one evening.
Yep.
In fact, I think he invited me around to Richard's place, probably without Richard knowing, because that's a Ken thing to do.
That's just what happens.
Anyway, I met these guys, and the night I went up there, they had borrowed from the university an Oronica outdoor bridge, which was a Wi-Fi device.
Okay.
And I didn't know what Wi-Fi was. Up to this, the sum total of my network experience or successes would be getting internet connection sharing on Windows 98 SE to work.
Right. Okay.
Which, if you had a how-to guide would be good, but when you don't have a how-to guide, it was frustrating as anything. Anyway, on a dial-up modem, I should add.
Yes.
Yeah, so
a challenge. Yes.
So they were playing with this stuff, and they had a laptop there, and it was plugged into their home network, and I think both laptop and home network devices were running Linux.
Yep.
And I think my takeaway from that evening was, what's this ping thing they're doing? But trying to get these things to actually talk. Yeah, we weren't talking into that. But then we sort of it became a very interesting thing, and a bunch of us started building antennas for 2.4 gigs, and we bought crazy stuff.
Yep.
We had eyes at a PCMCI adapters that we bought from the States secondhand.
Yep.
And the PCMCI cards we bought, I don't know if you remember, before 802.11b there was 802.11b, which was kind of different to this, and it was 2 megabits half duplex.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we sort of ended up with StarNet, which was good for Southern Tas Amateur Radio Network.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Just to show how old we were, we ran our own IRC server, we had our own Quake server on there. The internal part of the network versus the internal part of the website, the external part of the website was firewalled simply by addressing private IP addresses on the links to the internal stuff. So you could, yes, I knew nothing about it, nothing about computers or networking.
I love it. And they were grid pack antennas.
The old Ozstar grid packs.
That's
yes.
right. That were modified.
Yes.
I think I've still got one somewhere, Murray.
Yeah. Oh, look, and we had heaps of them, and we squatted a few repeaters around the place, particularly one on Mount Faulkner, which got us a link from my place in Lindisfarne out to Richard's place in Tea Tree.
Yep.
And also had a link across the river to Clayton's place. And the three of us pooled our dial-up internet resources, because we all had a monthly account, and between the three of us we could be online all the time, we discovered.
Right.
And so we had a second phone line installed at my house, and when the internet stopped working, one of us would have to log into the Linux dialer box and change the account settings to the next person who had some data left, and away we'd go for a few more days, and normally we'd get through the month. Yeah.
I love it.
And of course, it was so much quicker at Richard's place, because I could get, I could sync at, maybe 40 kilobits a second.
Yeah.
Whereas he was syncing it, he was struggling to get 9600 out there back in the day.
I love it.
So
Absolutely.
that's how that all
love it.
started. But
Okay. So
that
that
sort of caused a bit of a hiatus from amateur radio. That and some life events.
yes.
Kids, ex-wife, new wife, that sort of stuff.
Yep. Life. Yes.
That's it.
So from that sort of thing in StarNet, where did that take you?
Look, well, people started asking, can you put a link between my shop and my house? I'm like, no. It's like, who's going to fix the brakes? You're going to ring me? No. This is the hobby. you can't use this for commercial purposes, because it was broken for parts of it were broken for weeks at a time until somebody got around to fixing their stuff, because everyone owned their own stuff. So there's no commercial application here. Anyway, so long and short of it, we started. A few of us got together and more interested ones and started a commercial entity, which I still work for, and is now out at the Techno Park and still does some radio stuff, but mostly ambient and fibre stuff.
But it's all radio based, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I actually made a note in my notes here. It's like it says 2 meg to 100 gig in 15 years.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we were buying and selling 2 megabit per second services when we started, and now I've got my upstream network vendors trying to sell me 100 gig links for what we used to, for the same money we used to pay for maybe 100 meg 15 years ago. Maybe less, actually, when I think about it.
Bandwidth's
so,
cheap.
That's just technology. Yeah.
It's a bit like storage. Storage is cheap, and memory is cheap, and
yeah.
So,
so I had a bit of a hiatus from amateur radio, and then I managed to be conned into going on a sorry about that. I managed to get conned onto going on an impromptu SOTA expedition. And you may recognise yourself there, Justin.
May recognise that bum, yeah.
On a very, very cold afternoon.
Yes. That'll be Mount Faulkner then.
You on 5 watts, and you had about a dozen people come back, and I was absolutely amazed. And so I think that actually was probably the start of getting back into amateur radio.
Okay.
I didn't really have a SOTA radio, but I made do.
Yeah.
Here's my trusty Barrett 550 that weighed about 4 kilograms.
Lovely.
Complete with my lead acid battery that probably weighed another 3.
Yep.
But they really go in the backpack, and as long as you didn't have to hike too far, it was quite acceptable. So most of the summits I've done have been ones where they've been, not days of hikes, probably under 2 hours, most of them, I would say.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't know what SOTA is, it's about activating summits.
Yep.
And I took a screenshot of this last night. Everyone plays this game differently. I'm looking to activate the most number of unique summits. So you'll notice that my percentage unique is 100 because I've never activated the same one twice.
There you go.
And there was a stage where I was running neck and neck with LTD, but he's I've
taken off.
I've sort of slacked off on that for a few years, and those guys up north are right into it. So he's well out of reach now.
Yeah.
But
no,
yeah, so that's
good stuff. That's excellent.
Sort of thing.
That's so. You've told us a few of the people who have inspired you along your amateur radio journey in DY and a certain person on Mount Faulkner and a few others. So, and Robert Mackenzie, probably the start of that sort of interest, which is fantastic. Any others who you sort of notable who you can point out who sort of inspired you along the way?
Look, I'd actually just like to point out that I actually feel very fortunate to be in a club which has got so many really clever people in it. So many people that know lots and lots about lots of things. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Rex, because when I sort of came back into amateur radio, in a more active way a few years ago, I bumped into Rex at the club rooms. And I said, "Oh, are you still into all that microwave, super high or super low power or low signal, weak signal, super weak signal microwave stuff. And his reply was, yes, it's still all absorbing. I remember sitting there in the club one night listening to him effectively publish for the first time results on some propagation on vertical versus horizontal polarization of his 10 gig stuff from an elevated position going through the ionosphere twice to get moon bounce happening, and that his theory on why it behaves. And I'm like, we're just sitting at our local club listening to effectively a first pass of a scientific theory that's probably not been published anywhere in the world before ever. And so, like, I think that I feel very fortunate to be in a club, because I know there's probably a lot of clubs where people just sit around and drink coffee, and there's a lot of that happens at ours too. But it's a good social thing, and it's really good. The Soda thing, you totally got me hooked there. And there's lots of things. I think the 23 centimetre activity you got going, that's just great.
Yeah,
like
fantastic.
I'm really interested in that.
Yep.
And I've started my journey towards the 3 centimetre realm.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know if I'll achieve it or not, but I've sort of set a goal to have at least a terrestrial version running by the RD contest next year, so I don't have to borrow one.
Excellent. It's a good goal. Something to work towards.
Yeah.
No, excellent. So, I have to say, you did exceptionally well in the RD this particular year.
Thank you.
And
very, very, very proud of that.
Definitely.
I don't think I've ever had a certificate before. Actually, I haven't got one yet, but I'm assuming I'll get one at some point.
Yes. Yep. So, give us a bit of an idea of sort of the journey to winning the single operator phone in the RD in 2020.
Look, I've entered the RD on many occasions. Not that many with the view of winning.
Okay.
I've had a fair crack a few times.
Yep.
In fact, Ben and Richard and myself and a couple of others activated the club call sign from Penstock one year in a multi.
I remember that. Yeah.
But I think we only got maybe 400 contacts for all of us that year. Yeah, look, I've always had I've just had fairly limited resources and very small shacks, and it's been quite difficult. In fact, where I am at the moment is the most luxurious ever, because 6 months ago my eldest bought a house and moved out with his girlfriend, and now I have a spare room for a shack. So
Okay.
I've never, since Starnet days, I've never had a proper place to call a shack. When I was in Goodwood, I actually had a comprehensive shack set up.
Ooh, right. Okay.
Now, if you have a look there, you'll see that there's a microphone on the left-hand side of the picture. That's actually hanging on the wall.
Right. Okay.
And on the right-hand side is the window. There is just enough room for me to sit a chair there, and the back of the chair is touching a bed in the spare room.
Right.
And to the left of that's wardrobe.
Right.
So that is the absolute sum total of space. 15-inch monitors, the absolute max you could go there.
Yes. Okay.
And you can see I've got the trusty 6-metre radio on the side to fit in there. No other way of doing it.
Good stuff. Economy of space. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really quite happy to be to have a whole room here. So
Yeah. Well, do you want to? That's probably a good segue. Do you want to?
Sorry, I'll segue there a little bit. But to answer your question, I think the secret is having a lot of local participants.
Okay.
To keep the numbers clicking over.
Yep.
I think the only possible differentiator I can think between, you know, at least the first three places, is I made a conscious effort not to get caught in any pile-ups.
Okay.
There'd be like 6 or 7 people all trying to work each other, and like if I'd worked 3 of them and I just couldn't get a nose in to work the other 3, I'd just move on, go into a different band,
Move on.
come back.
Yeah.
Not worth waiting.
Yep.
But apart from that, no particular strategy.
No, but it's interesting you say that, Murray, because I always remember, I think it was a talk we had here by Martin, 7GN, and he made the comment, he said, your score is proportional to the time your bum is on the seat.
There is a fair bit of that too.
Calling. So, and I always remember that, and your comment about if you're sitting there doing nothing, waiting for, you know, the last 3, you're actually not making contacts. And it's interesting in VKCL because you can do those little charts which show, you know, in the first hour you had an average rate of 50 calls an hour, you know, and you see that drop off and go up and down and all sorts of stuff. If you want those big scores, you know, your average score has to be pretty high. So
Yeah,
that's,
I guess.
so yeah, I always remember that it's proportional to the time that your bum's on the seat and you're actually calling. So yeah.
Well, probably the other thing to call out then in light of what you just said, which of course is quite obvious, but I failed to mention, is that there's only so far that your vocal cords last. So a keyer is key. You have to be able to hit the button and call CQ without yelling into the microphone.
Correct. Or you just go
You
hoarse.
just can't keep that up for 24 hours.
Correct. Well and truly. Which is one thing I really like about the IC705. built-in keyer.
Yeah. Yes.
So no, okay. So that's.
And on that, I'd also like to point out that it was that even though I was using good equipment, which was the 9918 at the club,
Yep.
And a reasonable location at the club, but you know, it's not a mega location.
Yeah.
It was through all bands from 6 to 160 were via the end-fed half wave, which, if any of you have had a look how I erected it at the club, is not particularly optimal.
Yeah. There you go.
As in, it's nowhere near straight. It's almost on the ground, and
Yeah. But hey,
160 metres anyway.
it did its
And it's
job.
made of stainless steel,
There you go.
so not optimal.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, that's a good segue. Do you want to give us a bit of a tour of of your shack, of your salubrious shack? You know?
Sure. It's not particularly awe-inspiring, but
No,
we'll
that's
have
all right.
We'll have a bit of a tour.
That's fine.
I have in right above my laptop here the 818,
Cool.
complete with its
New
3D
bracket.
printed
Very nice.
3D printed bracket. In behind that, I have my collection of radios. So you can see the digital one here is just hanging out of the wall.
Yep. Okay.
Off its bracket. I have an antenna switch there between the two antennas, and over here I have a high pass filter to try and filter out some of the noise from the multi-kilowatt broadcast stations that I have just up the road.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have 210 and a 2 and a 400 watt broadcast station within 2 kilometres of me.
Yep.
And that's a filter that RX built for me,
Yep. Okay.
and it works a treat.
Okay.
It cuts 936 down to S8, S9,
Okay. Okay.
which is a at 10 kilowatts of 2 kilometres and a really big antenna. I think's
That's not
pretty
bad.
cool for
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. And here I have my VHF radios,
Okay.
which just a matched pair of 270 Linkos and my Yaesu 1296 on the top,
Okay.
and they're just bolted to the side of my power supply there.
Okay.
The microphone on the 2 meter one's a bit broken at the moment, and so I have my trusty old
Kenwood.
forever 2
Yes.
meter rig pressed into service. And I have a not a Barrett 550, but a Barrett 2050, which also actually belongs to RX, but it's on long-term loan until he needs it back.
Okay.
Complete with matching power supply.
Yes. And antenna tuning unit. Lovely.
And the antenna tuner, yeah.
And the antenna tuning unit's made for it, Murray. It's the same size as the two cases.
I know. It's about the right size. But that really is the extent of my shack. I mean, I've got some workbench area which is suitably messy.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
think.
Excellent. Excellent.
Mm.
Oh no,
So
good
that's,
stuff. Good stuff.
It's a very quick tour of the shack, and that's pretty much all there is to the shack.
That's fantastic. No. And probably a question. What keeps you interested in amateur radio? Like, what keeps you now coming back to it? You sort of, you during the Starnet days, you made a comment. You sort of left amateur radio for a little while, but then you came back in, and
My life was just too busy.
yeah. Okay.
I've actually just managed to achieve a bit more work-life balance and
Yep.
and more class amateur radio as life rather than work.
Yep.
Look, it's fun, it's interesting, and I find that even just the social aspect of Wednesday night at the clubs is it's just a really good scheduled thing.
Yep.
Scheduled non-work thing.
Good
know.
mental health break.
And to be honest, I very rarely bring a project along. I'm usually just one of the people that sits and has a coffee and talks to people. Sometimes I do. And the projects I've mostly been working on at the moment are actually, somewhat Arduino based.
Yeah.
With
Because
some
I was
radio stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say I do remember you bringing quite a number of Arduino based things up to play with. Yep.
Yeah, I've still got a few unfinished ones on the bench here somewhere. I've got a fan controller which is in the beta stage which is just basically to reduce the noise in the shack by turning the fan on only when the power supply gets warm.
Required, yes.
All the time.
Okay.
What else have I got on the go there? I've got some little bits of show and tell that I got in the last week. Bought some parts somewhere. Here we go. Richard got these parts from the UK from an amateur over there, which is a little circuit board.
Ooh, okay.
And the power transistor and instructions.
Okay.
So they are for building a 23 centimetre amp, which is supposed to be around about the 60 watt mark if you can put about 10 watts in.
Wow.
I
Okay.
have 1 watt to go in, so I'm not expecting anywhere near that. But it came with a very nice machined copper heat sink to
Nice.
put it on, and
Okay.
obviously you've got to put that to a proper heat sink, but that's just the spreader. So that's what came in the kit.
Excellent.
I've acquired in the last couple of weeks.
Yes. Very nice.
So focused.
Yep.
Some changeover relays to complete that amp.
So are they look like they're good up to well above 1.2 gigs.
Yes, so they're 2S1, so they're good to 18 gigs
Yes. Okay. Very nice.
at 50 watts, I think.
Okay.
They're quite a solid thing, and I last week a guy posted a an ad on one of the amateur radio Facebook groups, and he just went, "Does anyone perchance happen to have a remote head for about 550?"
Okay.
Now, my trusty 550 now resides in a friend's boat,
Right.
being used by its local head, and
Okay.
the remote head's been sitting in the shed for some years now. And so I went, "Oh, yes, I've got one." He said, "Oh, great." He goes, "How much do you want for it?" I went, "Oh, look, I'll post it to you. Maybe post me something of interest. I'm looking for some relays." And he posted me this,
Right.
which is a 2SE series,
Nice.
which is good to 26.5 gigs.
Very nice.
And I'm like, and he messaged on Facebook, and he goes, because he sent me a couple of other relays, which are ones out of a FM828, which are HF type relays.
Yeah.
He said, he said, "Was that enough? You're happy with that?" I'm like, "Mate, I'm stoked." I'm stoked. And also during the week, unrelated but from a different party, I received a WR75 SMA transition, which is
Very
going
nice.
to go with this, and this is going to be these bits towards my
10
my
gigs.
10 gig.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I figure I don't need a waveguide relay if I'm not going to go for sort of power to do EME. I'll just start with a terrestrial rig to start with,
Yeah.
and it'll be a little bit cheaper and more manageable.
I'm with you on that, Murray. However, don't mention that to Rex. Yeah.
Look, we'll get there. We'll get there with the high power stuff. Just need to save for the amp.
Okay. Well, what I might do is I'll finish off with a question about because we've got a number of new amateurs. A number of new amateurs always coming into the hobby, but within the club, we certainly have had a bit of quite a few just recently coming in and doing their assessments, and I just probably ask you for your sage advice to a young or a person coming into a young person or a person coming into, or not so young person coming into the hobby of amateur radio. What you'd sort of ask them.
Yeah, just one second.
Yep. At least it was the cat. It wasn't the cat walking across the keyboard.
No. It's my wife saying, "You said you'd be finished by 8:30. Dinner's going cold."
Okay, right.
Four things. Being a little weird is not a problem.
Okay.
Hang around with the weird guys, because they are the ones that will actually have like really good ideas.
Yep.
Yeah. And just because as an old guy there doesn't mean he doesn't know anything, because some of the coolest things I saw at the beginning of my amateur radio were stuff that RO brought along to as show and tell to our training class.
Yep.
Weather fax reception, some odd stuff. I'm like, wow, how do you do that? That's cool. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure where I started with the packet radio, but I certainly had a big session into packet radio. OCD is not a bad thing. Do things in order.
Yep.
Triple check everything. And despite what people say about the internet ruining amateur radio, it absolutely has just made it better, because you can actually find out how to do things in days instead of years now.
Correct.
When you're trying to do something,
It's absolutely exploded the hobby. It's
so
just
listen to the old guys.
Yep.
Learn how to use Google. There's lots of cool stuff.
That's fantastic, Murray. Any final comments?
No, I don't really. I think I've probably prattled on way far enough. Just
That's cool. That is well. Thank you very much, Murray. That's been an absolute wonderful interview. It's been really good. So I thank you for your time, and you can go and have your cold tea now.
thank you.
What we might do, just hang on the line for a little while, because we had a bit of a problem with our streaming and we didn't. This hasn't been streamed out, but it has been recorded, Murray. So it will go up on the website after this. We've just had a little bit of a problem with our streaming and the key with the stream, which we're still working out. But I did do a recording. That's fine. Thank you, Murray. I'll let you go and hopefully have your warmed up tea, and we'll catch you up at the club next time. That you'll be out of quarantine. So good stuff.
I'm out on Friday. I'll be there next week.
All right. Catch you later, Murray. And this is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania, with our DATV Experimenters Night and 73, and we'll catch you next week.